Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm so pleased that we are together with you today, and I'm really pleased that I have Mohammed Shukri. Good morning to you, Mohammed.
Good morning from Bahrain.
Hey, really good. And Phoebe Francis, I wonder where Phoebe is today.
Good morning, Graham and Mohammed. It is a nice sunny morning in Dubai.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's really good. So I sometimes have thoughts that may be occasionally interesting, and this time, with a little bit of input, I think it has added some more interest to what I had thought in my mind. Actually, it wasn't my thought. I'm going to suggest that today we talk about lead or they will leave. Right?
Who will leave?
Who will leave? The customers will leave, but who else will leave? The customers will leave. Who else will leave? Your wife might, no, sorry, who will leave? Lead, who will leave? The people that should be following you. We sometimes call them staff. We sometimes call them direct reports. We try not to call them subordinates. Why do we not try to call them subordinates?
Yeah.
Why not?
First of all, it's a very long word.
But it's also sub. It's down. So we avoid that. We want to talk about direct reports. We want to talk about followers. So here is the statement today, and I'm going to ask Mohammed to lead us off. Lead or they will leave. So what does that mean to you, Mohammed?
Well, it means the other lady the other day saying to me where I was doing a leadership program, and she is supposed to be also in this program for the reason of building her leadership. But guess what? She was annoyed with her leader when she told me, I'm not going to stay, Mohammed. I'm going to leave this organization. I said, why? No, it's not been like before. And the people there leading us, I've had it with them. I said, I'm sure. Are you sure you have reached to a stage, a lot of experience? She has so much experience in the organization. Suddenly, she's leaving because of a person. So, yeah, I can really understand that.
Yeah, and we know the old line, it's been around a long time, is people don't leave companies or organizations. They don't. They leave managers, or they leave leaders who aren't leading properly. Phoebe, what's your comment on this before we drill deeper?
Yeah, so sometimes it is our experience that when we have a great or good leader in our workplace, how relaxed we are, how comfortable we are, how we feel belonged in that place. And in many places, that is not happening. There is a Gallup study which I recently came across, which says that only 1 in 10 managers are good leaders. And that is alarming. So what about the 9? What are we doing about that? And what is the cost which the organization may have in their regular operations if we have a state in which only 1 out of 10 managers are trained on leadership,
So
good in leadership.
Let me just clarify those figures from the Gallup organization. That means that the 3 of us are trying to make 9 out of 10 managers much better managers so that they are leaders. We've got a big job. 9 out of 10 need us. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are listening now who report to their manager and they kind of agree with us, right? So let me share a recent statistic that I got sent or saw. And this was carried out by the Wiley organization, the publishers of the Leadership Challenge, which we all love and which we know is so strong and so valuable. Their survey showed that 97% of people, that's pretty big, right, stay in organizations because of the leadership. Effective leadership means 97% retention. They want to stay because of the leadership. Now, let me share an example. I've talked a lot in other forums about the cost of poor leadership. It is significant. Let me give you an example of something that I was aware of a few years ago, where a woman who I knew, I was talking to, she was in what we would call the professional services area. She was leading 2 teams of 16 people in selling professional services. She was, with her teams, the highest revenue generator for the international company that she was working for in the country, highest revenue generator. So when I was talking to her on this occasion, I kind of did for every little while, she said, oh, by the way, tomorrow I'm resigning. What? Why are you resigning? She said, I can no longer take, that was her word, my manager. And what she was saying by that, for people who may not understand that expression of I can't take him or her anymore, she said, she was just saying I can no longer work with or for that person. I've had enough. Now, I knew that she had worked with the organisation for just over 9 years, a long time, and she was going to leave. There were 2 teams of 8 people who she was responsible for. They were high performers. So she left the organisation. Her resignation was accepted. And I then said to her after she left, what did your staff feel about your resignation? What was their response? And she said, 4 of those also resigned. Not just threatened to resign, but resigned because they would not be working with her. They'd be working with someone else who they didn't want to work for as their manager. So that cost to the organisation was significant. 9 years, the knowledge that she has not only of how the company operates, but the client base that she's working with, the relationship has significant cost. And when we did some calculations, and it doesn't take too long to get there, but it's around about $1 million cost to that multinational company because of what happened. All because of the poor leadership of the person she was reporting to. He was always putting pressure on her. He didn't do those things that we talk about so often of building the relationship, of recognizing the good things that she's done. So this is what happens. What can we do to make a difference, Mohammed?
I was just thinking, as a shock after this story, how many of those bosses or managers make people leave the organization because of poor leadership or no leadership? And my biggest worry is, are the organizations aware of the magnitude of loss and harm coming to their organizations, or they're just because they delegated the work to this guy, they are unaware of the uncalculated losses, because their account book calculates everything, but does it really calculate how much experience we have lost, which I'm pretty sure it can be translated into dollars, not just people.
Yeah, and one point before I move to Phoebe, so often people are allowed at that level to get away with things, right? Because
agree. Yeah.
Run through some reasons, because their father owns the company, because of a range of things, and that's just a simple example. But there's a range of reasons. Oh, technically he is fantastic, whatever, right? There are a range of reasons why we hang on to that person. But if people who are listening to us now are at the next level down and they are suffering the subjugation, if you like, the putting down, the difficult circumstances, well, I've just got to do my job. I just focus on my job and do the best I can, but I'd rather leave, of which I could find another job. They are not there. They are present, but they are not there. Well, actually, they're not present. They're sitting on a seat, but they're not there. And this is where
their full potential is not there. They are not unlocking their full potential here.
Absolutely. And this old cliche, and I still keep hearing it and I shudder, that our staff are our greatest resource. They're not your greatest resource unless you're looking after them.
Exactly.
But they can be a liability, for gosh sake. Your managers can be a liability. They're not your greatest resource unless they're performing really, really well. And it's not hard to get people to perform well. Phoebe, you're waiting in the wings. Please, your wisdom.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about, quite often when people in the hierarchy or positional authority of power, if they are not exposed to good leadership practice, they are at a disadvantage. And that is where, the learning process comes in.
Yes.
How can I learn about what are good leadership practices and what can I do about that? And it should be strategic from the hierarchy or the position they are in. What kind of leadership strategy I have, how I am developing my people, how are my, for example, learning process taking care of them. And quite often what we see, for example, a study by Gallup has highlighted that, the single poor leader costs an organization. That is, one person costs almost $126,000. So that, imagine that if I have 10 poor leaders in my organization, that is a $1 million cost which I am having.
Yeah.
And they cannot then look into what is my vision, values, what is my purpose as to take the organization forward. They are stuck in the circle.
Two points, if I may. In regard to the example that I shared with you earlier, I've kind of jokingly but also seriously said, if that organization in that area had spent $50,000 only, maybe $20,000 on developing their team, their leaders, they would have saved, well, $800,000, right? The saving, huge, but often they resist investing in the people who are there. They resist developing leaders. And one final point before we come back to Mohammed, I know he's waiting in the wings really to give some more of this, is that some people feel, to touch on your initial point, Phoebe, how do they become who they are? They become who they are because they watched their manager.
Yeah.
They learn.
Exactly.
They learn the bad habits and they don't know anything else. And they feel insecure. We talked about this often. We talked about the power of empowering recently and the fact that you've got to give your power away. But so many managers and poor leaders feel, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm threatened. They'll take my job. Lead or they will leave. Mohammed.
Yeah, I'll pick from your last point, actually. I was going to say something about that. I know we are looking at the leaders or the bosses who make their staff leave as the accused in this session. But really, how much can we blame them? If they are suddenly by the top leaders promoted, they are wanted in the next level of hierarchy, and these leaders have no clue what to do or how to get ready for this position, and immediately by default, they will go to the shorter path, which is just mimic who was there before you. And before we know it, it has become a pandemic in the organization. Everybody just copies everybody else. That's why I'm very passionate about one of your programs, Graham, which is about preparing succession plan to prepare future leaders. I think organizations, although this is not the subject of our session, we are talking about the leadership challenge and anything and everything under that. Still, I believe that preparing leaders for the next level so that they don't fall into the same mistake is really crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we've also talked, when we talk about succession planning, we talked about leaders leaving a legacy. And, we don't want that legacy to be that they had the highest attrition rate of their staff from any other manager in the organization. We want that legacy, hopefully, to be that when he or she left, everybody was so upset, but everybody also knew how to take the organization further because of what they had learned positively from that leader, he or she. Right? So that the leader walks away knowing that there's going to be continued great success. He doesn't have to be there. He doesn't have to be there yelling and screaming and micromanaging and doing all this, because that doesn't work. but he's set them up as because of his leadership style, and they love that, they learn from that, and they replicate that. They become the examples that, that they are inheriting, the example behaviour. Phoebe, one hand went up.
Yeah, something which when you mentioned that word yelling and other aspects which happen in workplace, what is happening is you are creating a yelling culture in the entire organization. And one thing which leaders don't realize is the cost. People getting ill, people getting stressed out, blood pressure, heart attacks, and those kind of things emerging in the workplace. And the cost of insurance is another aspect which is no one is looking at that point of time. So as Mohammed asked, how can we help to bring that awareness to the people in positions of authority so that we can help them to see, okay, if we have more leaders who are trained within the organizational hierarchy, top, middle, bottom, that may enable a culture which is also flourishing, innovating, and bringing beautiful new service levels to the clients.
Yeah. Before Mohammed responds, and you set him up really, really well, I want to make this point, on to what you said. When you said they're not aware of the cost, the managers, the ones who are problem. But what are they focusing on? What are they saying? We finished on time and on budget. Huh. What else do we want? Well, we want other things. Thank you very much. Because there are other areas of cost that are impacted on because of your behavior. You might have finished on budget and on time for that particular project, but the cost goes deeper than that. It's not about the hour to finish the job necessarily. Mohammed.
You know what? I think we are about to make a proposition and maybe a model for leaders. Before that, I will mention a story. In my previous company, we were adamant and serious about safety to the degree we, the final report for any accident, which should be signed by the manager of the department before it's gone to the central department and to the CEO. It was a normal form. What are the causes? What happened? What are the corrective actions? Okay. Then we added a box right on the top of the a table, actually, right on the top of the report. In that table, we made a matrix and broke down the costs of that injury or accident in terms of Bahraini dinars. That's money. It wasn't there before. So we helped him to just identify the number of dinars lost because of that employee not being on the job due to the injury. The number of dinars spent on his medicine. The number of hours lost because of people leaving their job and investigating, etc. It was a very thorough, and it amounted to some alarm. The managers suddenly, although they are not responsible directly for the injury happening in their department, and yet they had to calculate how much of the department budget they couldn't keep. You know what happened in their behavior after that? And the CEO is signing, looking at this and saying, see, you are supposed to bring up the least budget at the end of the year. Indirectly, the managers got alert and awake because they are raising this. My proposition here, I think our proposition, I'm just, mouthing it out, is this. What if we create a table? I think Phoebe can help us in this, really, all right? A table that calculates how much is lost, not because of people who leave, which is very severe, but also who underperform due to your poor leadership. And if we submit this report to the highest levels, I think the highest levels will come in terms with the magnitude and severity of not leading or poor leading.
I'm just going to suggest that there's one response that that some managers might have when they see these figures about these people are not performing as they should be, that their response was, well, get rid of them. Get rid of them. They're not performing well. However, I have worked with leaders over time who've talked to me about difficulties with particular individuals not performing well. And I have shown them how to help that person perform well. It's far better to have that person staying in the organization and performing well than letting them someone else. Here's a quick story. Someone I was coaching many years ago when he had a number of staff who were not performing well, and he couldn't get rid of them. And we worked on various ways of improving, and we got the number down to one person. And he said this one person was a woman, and he said she came to me she wasn't performing at all well. And in fact, she was costing just what we talk about at a manager level as well. She came to him one day and she said, I want to transfer to another government department from this government department. Would you please sign my transfer the document that I've got here? And you'd think that he'd say, quick, give me the pen. Make sure it's got plenty of ink in it because I want to sign it quickly. In fact, he didn't do that but you'd think, well, he's going to get rid of this poor person who's not performing well, who's impacting on other people and getting poor performance from them because she is not leading. He said, I'm not going to sign this because if you go to that organisation and you perform the way you're performing here now, I will get the blame about your performance. When you are performing at your level, as you should be and more, I will happily sign your transfer. So what did she do? She changed. And this is related to what you said a moment ago about certain things that managers and leaders can't change in terms of numbers and so on. But what they can change is their behaviour, and they can change the attitudes and behaviours of the people that they are leading. And this has a direct influence on cost, right? So what is it? It's leading. Phoebe, I cut you off. I do apologise. Please let us hear your wisdom now again. More of it.
No, again, I'm just capturing that message which Mohammed was sharing, the making the invisible cost visible in the organization and then sensitizing the people in the hierarchy leading the organization that their responsibility is to develop more leaders in the workplace so that these invisible costs can be brought down. Otherwise, they are staring at the opportunity cost. Being an economics graduate, I always say, what is your opportunity cost of not developing more leaders in your workplace?
So let's take that specifically. If I'm the HR director, just assume this, or I'm at a level of making decisions in this regard, and we've got this report from the various departments that you're going to devise, Phoebe, and it's showing where there are weaknesses in performance and there's a cost to the organisation. And if I'm at that level, rather than saying, oh, good, there's 23 people who we can replace immediately and save money. We know the cost of looking for people. We know the cost of bringing them in. We know the cost of setting them in and building, all of that. But if I'm the HR director, so I hope there's HR directors listening, and I hope there's people listening who can influence their HR director. If the HR director says, let's do a leadership program with those leaders and let's focus on improving their leadership skill, and then in 6 months' time, we'll look at those metrics again and see what the difference is, right? And getting them to perform effectively because of your leadership will save the organisation so much money. Do you agree?
Phoebe, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you said to the right point, you said the right points, which are basically helping, when I develop my leaders, they take care of my team. The team will then start to work better, and they start to share challenges which they face openly, and that create an opportunity to change the processes, which is actually innovation happening in practice, which leads to better outcomes. So it is all connected, that the circle of connection between one point to the other. Otherwise, what happens if people are left? There is a vacuum. Others will be stressed out. Then they start exploring, where can I go to as an employee from this organization? Then hiring cost increase, training cost increase, customer displacement. So there is a huge amount of cost, which again, I will call the opportunity cost for many organizations and the leaders if they don't invest in developing more leaders.
Yeah, and look, it seems like the simple solution to let the staff go and bring new people in. It seems like a simple way of doing it, but it's not. You know, in HR, immediately they've got to find someone else. They've got to bring all of it. It's not. There is a far simpler way, at least to try this, to have leaders develop better skills and behaviours to improve the relationship that they've got with their teams, to improve what teams are doing, and to get the results that are going to happen. Oh, my gosh. I keep banging on the wall saying it's not hard. Is it, to become a better leader?
No.
And in fact, I'm always reminded by your advice personally when I asked you, Graham, that I'm about to do a big keynote about how leadership actually is not going to incur or, cost more, the word more. So Graham Moore told me, in fact, it's going to cost a lot less if you develop your leadership. It's not the other way around. If you build leaders, they will bring down the losses automatically, the losses in all terms, measurable, non-measurable, and they will bring up the performance. It's the key word, leadership, or they will leave.
Lead or they will leave. And Phoebe, here we are tasking you with devising this form or this process of identifying the hidden costs of this. And it's, I'm sure that organisations are going to be shocked when some of these factors are made more readily available. Look at what's happening. Look at the cost because of this, and how much better you're going to be when we have a better leadership process happening. So I want to ask you this question in the closing few minutes of our conversation today. If I am at a senior level and I am listening to this discussion now, what do you suggest I should do? Because I recognise some issues. So here we go. I'm at a senior level in my organisation and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this relates to me. What should I do?
I think at the beginning, even before just taking a large, start quantifying, okay, even roughly as a senior leader, are you getting the outcome that you wish or the outcome that your organization ought to be at this time, at this stage of its growth, especially compared to the competitive market? Are you there or are you slowing down? What's slowing down? It might be that the people who are in charge of producing directly aren't being led properly. Maybe not by you, maybe not by someone you have appointed to lead them. By that alertness and awakeness, maybe you are able to solve the problem immediately through leadership.
Yep.
That is before going to any other program, although going to programs as a urgency, contingency, urgent action is also highly advisable.
Yes. Now, I'm going to switch that around a little bit and ask Phoebe's solution to this. Let's just suggest that there are people who are listening to us now who are they are the subjects of a leader who is not a leader, and they are feeling uncomfortable and they are thinking, oh my gosh, I want to take the next train out of here and hand in my security pass and move on to another better job. There's got to be a bit of, or thinking, I am stuck here. When will I ever get out? It's like being in prison and I can't leave because I need the job, I need the money, and I can't leave. Phoebe, what advice would you give them to help them find a solution to the things that we've identified in this discussion?
Yeah, I think one of my question is to each employee is, what do I need? Am I happy with the place where I am in? Can I share my inner thoughts with my line manager or the hierarchical leader? And if I can, and someone is listening to me, that is a good place to be. But if there is no one listening to you, time to check and make sure that you find another alternative. Because sometimes if, there are, as I mentioned, leadership can be good, bad, and ugly. When it is in a bad, ugly leadership, practice, you
Yeah.
are stressing and making your health challenging in that place. So get out as
Well,
early as.
and I certainly know that there comes a point where you say you must leave for your health's sake. But I'm going to look for another option for this person or these people who are feeling a little bit trapped. And you talked about, or you mentioned that they hopefully can have a conversation with their manager about how they're feeling. One of the big issues is that they are not able to have a conversation with that person who may simply say, well, just get on with your job. There's people waiting to take your job, get on with it, right? So they may already know that the idea of a conversation with their manager is not on the table at all, because he or she just doesn't want to listen and just tells me to go on with my job. And there's two aspects to where I'm heading now. In some organisations, when that person leaves, there is, of course, an exit interview. Sometimes that's the key word, not always. And the organisation might learn what they should change. But if that person goes to the HR director, who hopefully they should be able to have a conversation with honestly and say, look, I just need to tell you this. I'm not just trying to make trouble. I'm trying to find a better solution. These are some of the issues that I'm facing, and I know I'm not the only one. I know that I'll perform a whole lot better if these other things are happening. And I'm not asking for more money. I'm not asking for shorter working hours. I'm just asking for leadership. And it's not hard to get. What can we do? So this is about, yes, having the conversation, but not always will people be able to have the conversation with their manager, who just says, get on with your job. No, I haven't got time to talk, sort of thing. Or we'll say, yes, I'll fix it, but they don't. So I'm encouraging people in that situation where they can talk to their HR person, director or whoever, and have a conversation with them about it, because the HR department have got to look after people, not just the managers. They've got to look after the entire headcount, staff in the organisation, and get the best results for the organisation. And sometimes they need to have a conversation with the person who's hurting, who's feeling that they're unloved and they're being taken advantage of. So,
yeah, just to close that part, Graham, that sense or where we are going will be always there within the minds of people, and it becomes subtle in the communication between each other. And and that is where HR has to capture that information and see how I can help these people in that development process and make more better leaders in my workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. Mohammed?
I think whether we know it or not, we have created a huge alertness here, and maybe the call to action is pretty obvious. It might be, broke down into what the senior leaders need to do, the middle leaders need to do, and those who are led need to do. Regardless, we now know pretty, vividly that if we don't lead them, they will leave, and that's a huge cost, and it's unamounted, so unaccounted for.
So your title for our discussion today was very apt. Lead or they will leave.
Yeah.
Very clear, right? So one final comment before we go, and that's this. If anybody listening to us now wants to share a story, an example or a concern that they have, Graham, Graham, at leadershipchallengemiddeeast.com. Send me an email and we will discuss this on air in our conversations. And I'll also respond personally to any email that I get. Graham, Graham, at leadershipchallengemiddeeast.com. And we look forward, I know I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues here, we look forward to having a conversation where you, as our viewers, are part of this next week. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you, Mohammed. I wish you all the best for a great week ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.